Hi everybody, I'm Jack and this is Raw Tropical Living. Thanks for joining me today. Hope your day is well. I'm making this on Friday afternoon. Most of you, the week's over for you. I'm kind of in a weird zone because I've been traveling, but things are good. Feeling much better today. Been taking in crazy amounts of good fruits and vegetables and juices and nutrients and all kind of things. Been just by drinking, eating a lot of good stuff, and I took two. I just got back from one walk. And the first few days I'm back here, you would think like I'm squatting massive amounts. My legs I feel a little soreness, and they will be sore because I took a long walk to the farmer's market this morning, and then I took another long walk to the little health food store, which was not very fruitful because the lady was not very business. I mean, she had a guy standing there for 30 minutes talking to her after he had finished his purchases, and I'm waiting to buy stuff. But anyhow, that's neither here nor there. I've talked about transition in videos before, and I've talked about aspects of what I've done, but I thought I would just make this one. You know, people ask me, I get emails and people say, well, how did you do this? How did you do that when you were coming to this lifestyle? So I figured I would start as best I could and from the beginning exactly where I came from. Just a little history, you know, as I told you just before I get started. I kind of transitioned without knowing I was transitioning, and I will explain this as it goes. Okay, let's rewind back to January of 2012, a bit over 3 years ago. I was going to do the whole New Year's Day resolution thing. I was going to get straightened out. I was drinking a lot at the time. I was eating a lot of bad food at that time. I didn't always do that. I've been thinking about this just so I don't exaggerate my stories. Even though I was in a period of eating really bad, when I just became aware that I was going to make a big change for my health, I went through a lot of periods in my life where I ate pretty good. So I probably overall was not the standard American diet consumer. But when I came to this lifestyle, I had been on a very, very bad version of the standard American diet for probably September, October, November, December, at least about 5 or 6 months. After I first moved to the city from the beach. You know, I was living at the beach here, and then I moved to the city for 1.5 years. Well, when I first got there, I mean, it was just about, when I first got there, I was living in a dirtbag hotel, eating fried chicken almost every day, and fried chicken, and they would call them here, I'm thinking in Spanish, tacos chinos, egg rolls, but they called them Chinese tacos. And these things were so greasy, you could just squeeze them and grease would drop out. Drinking a lot of beer with that. I was drinking a good bit during those periods. I was eating fried pork. I was eating just whatever. You know, the last few weeks, I don't know how many cheeseburgers I had before I came to it. Well, had a couple of alcohol episodes in January. I didn't get started on January 1st, but the third week in January, I said, okay, this is enough. I decided this year I was going to get healthy, and this is it. So the first week, just week 1, and I'm just throwing this real quickly in case anybody has any issues with substances. The first week after having a problem with alcohol, and I don't even remember exactly what I did this time, but the slap in the face. So the first week, I cut alcohol out, and I just put a lot of good fruits and vegetables into my diet. Well, let me just go with alcohol and smoking. The first week, to start off, I just said, okay, stopping drinking. Alcohol gone. Didn't want to quit the cigarettes in the same exact week, so I gave another week. Week number 2, cigarettes gone. Now that first week I had started, I didn't really know where I was going. Didn't know anything about raw veganism, not even remotely thinking about veganism, just thinking about getting healthy again. But I had always used fruits and vegetables a good bit to get me healthy when I had been, and it was mainly to lose weight, but this time for some reason I knew, from all the drinking I had done, I was starting to worry about liver, what repercussions am I going to have to deal with on my liver? Cancers, alcohol is, I think, if I've read right, haven't looked this up in some time, you're more prone to mouth cancers, even with alcohol, mouth, esophageal cancer and stuff like that. So I was just worried after 30 years of really hard drinking, what the consequences were going to be. So I just started eating, in the very beginning I probably had fruits or smoothies for breakfast. I would have, when I first did this, the meat was almost the same for the next few months until I found, okay, so this was about the 3rd week in January. I don't want to get too far ahead in my story. Okay, so for probably February, March, April, May, June, for the next 4 or 5 months, My diet was probably, I'd have a lot of fruit and vegetables in the morning, smoothies for lunch, and sometimes at dinner. A lot of times at dinner I was, finding out now it wasn't the best, but it was probably better than the animal products. I was sauteing vegetables, lots of vegetables in olive oil. I was making big salads at night. But during that time, I didn't know, I was like everybody else. It was all about, okay, where do you get your protein? You got to get the protein. So I didn't eat a lot of eggs, but I ate a fair amount of eggs. I was making, omelets. About the only dairy during that time, if I really look back, I wasn't drinking milk that much. I was using cheese pretty much only when I was making these little 2 and 3 egg omelets. I'd say I did that a couple of times a week. The meat, I was limiting the meat to, I would say, 3 meals a week. 3-4 meals tops a week. And I was eating the meat like a lot. I remember this one little place that I used to go get a typical meal around here, which consists of beans, rice, a sort of a meat, and then a salad. And their portions are a lot smaller on meat down here. So the meat went pretty drastically. I kind of went from, a period of pretty high meat to pretty low, to maybe 3 times a week. And that was usually chicken. And every once in a while I had this, there was this place close to where I worked, and I'd get a hamburger there, I think once a week, because I went to the office like once a week at the time. And I got it more for the condiments. For me, used to hamburgers, the way they were built, weren't so much about the meat, but just what about they put on it. And they did put a lot of, I liked the tomato, the lettuce, the onion, all that, but about once a week. Mostly I was eating fish on those 3 times a week, maybe, and then chicken maybe one time, rice, beans, and chicken. Kept doing this, was getting cleaner and cleaner, probably ate more meals at night that were the sauteed vegetables and the salads. I mean, I remember, it's hard to think back to that time, but I remember just making a lot of salads and a lot of the stir fry. So I was upping the vegetable intake. With the stir fry, I wasn't doing myself any favors by heating that olive oil, but still probably better than consuming the animal products. Right? And I wasn't consuming that many at that time. So there was about a 4-month transition period there that I was probably, I was probably eating very, very clean, very healthy compared to what most people, and I don't know if I'd even call that the standard American diet at that point. I would say I was eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. My diet had flipped over to a much higher plant-based lifestyle. Okay, let's fast forward. And the whole time I'm going to the gym, trying to pump, because that was the first thing, to try to get back in shape, look good. I don't know if I've ever shared I've shared my before pictures before, and I wasn't like huge. I didn't have tons of weight to lose, but I got a little sloppy. I had a big middle. And I always said with this tattoo on my stomach, I said, homie, that was the main reason I got it, to keep myself. I'm like, you can't wear one of those like thug tattoos on your stomach and be fat. Just can't do it. So I start losing weight, I'm working out at the gym, and actually, let's fast forward to about the time I'm about to become raw vegan, or high carb vegan, high raw right from the beginning. If I'd have known more about what I'm doing, and I'll go more into this in detail in a few minutes, I would have probably not lost another pound, because I had really lost the weight that I needed to lose by the time I found out about raw vegan. I was pretty cut. I didn't have a full-on competition six-pack, but you could see it there. I had the abs, and I still had some size. I had a little bit of bulk. At that, I was probably 180, because used to, and I'll tell you later, I lost a lot of muscle mass just not knowing what I was doing. Because used to, even when I would go through these little periods, I'd let myself get away a little bit. When I got down to about 180 was always lean. Very ripped on me. I wasn't like, because I'm somebody, I've been 245 at my highest, and I had the muscle under there. So at 180, I looked probably better aesthetically than I look now. But the eyes, I wasn't as clean. But so I find out about raw vegan one weekend. I don't know, it's one of those things, somebody shared something on Facebook, and I'm sure I clicked on that. I watched this, and there were like several degrees before I got to something that started talking about raw vegan. Don't remember what it was, but it clicked for me. It made sense. From that very weekend, a lot of times on the weekends, it can be quite rainy in the city, or just for some reason I would just chill out and stay in the house all weekend or stay in my apartment. And I watched videos that whole weekend. I watched a lot of people. And I did get a lot of good information, and I will never blame anybody about, me making a lot of mistakes in the beginning. And I can tell you, I had nobody that really gave me the whole big picture that really did me a whole lot of good. I was watching people that are living on juice fast and living on eating one thing all the time. And hey, if you're fasting or you're doing some period of cleansing, I'm not knocking that, but what I'm saying is that wasn't for me as a beginner. I mean, if there had been somebody like, some of you people that are watching this, especially people like Tanny Raw, if there had been somebody like that out there in the beginning, bam, I'd have probably flourished from day one, because I had the mentality. That first weekend, I went high vegan. I went high raw vegan. From that first weekend, I just determined I'm vegan. That's it. There was no, there was no question about that. I'll tell you in a minute. There were other things I did and ate that probably weren't the best in the world, but I was vegan from that weekend. Well, with the exception of honey. At the time, I was still, wasn't really all that aware of honey and stuff. And I've never been a big eater of honey, so I'm not going to get into the whole honey debate. I've never cared for honey, but I was eating some every once in a while. But that's been a very long time. I've been fully vegan since not too long after I got into the lifestyle. But yeah, and that, I've tried to convey this to some people, and they, you just on the one hand, no, you don't want to just forbid yourself on some things, but I just somehow erased it from my head. It's like, even though, I would walk by places, and I don't try to fool myself. I love vegans that are like, ooh, that meat smells nasty, ooh, that looks nasty. No, I still walk by and I smell some chicken frying, or I smell something cooking, and it doesn't repulse me, but I don't eat it. It's just like, it's like a seductive, it's like the beautiful woman that'll kill you. There's some mythology about that, the sirens. I know it's good, it looks good, but I don't need it. I don't need it. It's gonna hurt me. So yeah, from that very first weekend, that made it easy for me, because there just was no choice. I'm sure if I'd have gotten into a situation where it was starve or eat animal products, yes, I would have eaten it, but I don't. Most of us don't get put in those situations. So from the very beginning there, I was vegan, and I went pretty high raw right from the start. Now, what I was doing was, and this is where I fell into a mistake. I wasn't restricting my calories because I had heard somebody say, well, you need to eat this low, but just through watching what other people were doing at the time and listening to my stomach, I just started taking in less and less and less. But I wasn't hungry. It was just kind of like I was grazing enough all along to keep myself going. I'd have a couple of smoothies. Wasn't a ton of calories in those smoothies, though. I had juice a couple of times a day. No calories in those juice, hardly. And then, eating a little bit of fruit. I mean, at that time, I was probably that was probably back when I thought, ooh, 8 bananas in a day, that's a lot of bananas. So over the course of several months, my stomach shrunk, got smaller. I was eating less and less and less and less. Now, when I did eat cooked food, I was eating cooked food, I would say back then. I was still, almost from the beginning too, I was raw till 4. If I had a meal, if I ever had any cooked food during the day, it was usually at night. And I was probably in the beginning having 3 to 4 meals at night per week cooked. And a lot of that, and they were mostly steamed. It would be either steamed potatoes or this big bag of steamed vegetables that they sell for soups down here, for traditional soups, coincidentally, that are for beef soup. But it's like the vegetables come attached, and there's some good solid vegetables. There was yuca, ayote, things like root vegetables, potatoes, carrots, and then I'd eat the potatoes a lot. I was eating a lot of yuca at the time. First, was I using olive oil back? I was using some olive oil back then, not a whole lot though. And I just started wasting away. So, it got to a point where, and I was listening to some of these trippy types, and I'm like, I'm really emotional all the time. And I got to a point where, at first it was just every so often, and if I thought it was just because I'd had that happen before, like I'd get up off the floor too fast and I'd get dizzy. But it got to a point after about 3 or 4 months, after 3 months being on this lifestyle, that every time I stood up, I had to steady myself, and I got very self-conscious. Like there was, I've shared before this little vegan restaurant in San Jose, and I was going there, and that helped a lot. I was going to that restaurant probably about twice a week for that 3 or 4, 5, 6 month period right after I went raw vegan, and getting some good raw food. But even when I was there, I remember a few times I'd walk there and everything was just trippy. You know, I would stand up and just always, and I'm like, man, I'm going to face plant one of these days. So, comes around to about the end of September 2012, going back to the States for my high school reunion, my 30th reunion. Well, somehow I just wasn't putting two together. All during this time, like my jeans were just shrinking, and I had size 34 back then, and they were probably, you know, some of those pants, you've got a good range in there. They're the big 34s in the first place. So I'm walking down the street a lot of time like these, you know, these young kids that talk about with the saggy pants, holding them. I mean, my pants are just dropping. I actually cut 2 notches in my belt before I just finally figured one day, dude, you've lost a ton of weight. You need to go get some more clothes and another belt. So, you know, I go home right before my high school reunion, and this is the first time my mom's seen me since I started the raw vegan thing, and it's the first time I've been out of that apartment living. Well, for some reason, those mirrors just weren't telling me the story there. The first thing I remember my mom saying when I got to the States was, "My God, what have you done to yourself?" And that's the only thing she's ever said about this lifestyle, and I don't blame her. She just saw what she saw, and she saw a walking skeleton. Well, I get in, you know, and I get on the scale at my mom's house. It's a doctor's scale, which it's accurate. And I was 143 pounds. At 6'2", I was 143 pounds. I freaked out. And then I could see it. Then I started noticing it after that. Even when I went back to San Jose, I would look at myself, you know, catch my reflection in a store window or a mirror. And I'm like, God, you look horrible. You're like the scarecrow. You know, even just a little pick, you know, my arms ain't big guns now, but I mean, they were just like toothpicks, my shoulders. You could see my spine. And then I kind of went the other way because I didn't know, you know, I'm like, okay, well now I'll stay vegan, and us vegans, we can eat anything, and everything's about weight, so I've got more to, you know, now I just got a license to eat for a while. And I did, and I just started pounding potatoes with tons of olive oil on them. Potatoes, olive oil, lots of avocados. Sometimes I'd eat 2 or 3 avocados in a day. Wasn't aware of the fat yet. I wasn't educated on the balance of things yet. So some of the things I did in the beginning, I'm like, God, you were stupid. Some things I don't, you know, it was like, well, you're just going to make mistakes. You don't learn for a while how to plug the holes. But the biggest mistakes in the beginning were, number one, not eating enough food. Or when I went raw vegan. Now let me say, during the transition, I think you could follow what I did as a transition because I was dirty when I came there. I was coming from a place of lots of alcohol, lots of bad food, fried food, Chinese food with all the MSG. And we're not talking about, you know, I'm sure there's some clean Chinese food, but this was that stuff, oil and MSG. Pizzas, living on pizzas, just living on gnarly stuff. So, you know, if I can do it, you know, extrapolate from there. And I didn't, you know, I don't know how exactly I would have changed things or what I would have done if I'd have known right then about raw vegan. Maybe I would have jumped in too quick. Maybe it was a good thing that I didn't know about it. But I took that time. And I even had, listen, it's about the long term. These quick starts aren't going to do anything for you if you're constantly going back and forth, back and forth. And another thing I can tell from, you know, the transition, this is just for new people, at some point you do have to show a little discipline with yourself. You know, nobody's going to make that video or write that article or give you that tip that's just going to be the magic thing that's going to make all the cravings, all the hunger, all this go away. At some point, you are going to have a little discipline with yourself. Now, you can make it easier. If you don't try to do this stuff where I'm going from 0 to 80 just like that, it's going to be much easier for you, and you're more likely going to stick with it. You know, if you're eating the full standard American diet right now, just start making changes. Don't try to do it all at once, you know, but have a systematic plan. Don't let it linger forever. I mean, like I say, it was nothing for me to go from lots of meat, lots of fat, lots of, you know, bad stuff, on top of that alcohol. It wasn't hard for me to go to 3 days a week with meat. It wasn't hard for me to start eating a lot of, you know, eating decent amounts of fruit, having smoothies, having fresh vegetables. body didn't freak out. And if my body didn't freak out going from there to there, that was a pretty good start. I mean, if anybody was going to, you know, probably if I had gone straight to a high raw, lots of stuff, I'd have been in some pain because I would have detoxed real fast and would have had some healing crisis. But yeah, I took those months to slowly. By the time I got to that weekend of being raw vegan, I was, like I say, I was down to probably 3 portions of meat a week, and not what you call portions of meat in the States or Canada. These are like, you know, they have smaller portions down here, maybe 3 to 4 ounces with the rice and beans and the salad. So I was down to about 3 portions of meat a week. I was probably having cheese a couple of times a week. I was probably having eggs 2 or 3 times a week, and that was it. So by the time 4 or 5 months had passed, it was not even that hard to make that next step and just cut the rest out of it. Now, you know, we can't go backwards. I mean, I speculate where would I have been if I'd have known exactly, you know, if I'd have known to do it the right way from the beginning. But hey, I don't know that too many people have probably jumped into this lifestyle and just done it perfect from the beginning. But there's a lot of good resources out there, and I think if you'll just do it steady, and I just get so frustrated seeing people fail when they're trying to be real extreme, when they're trying to get on the fast track. They're enthusiastic, they mean well, but meaning well doesn't mean all that much if you don't succeed. And if you know, you have to do something different. If you're consistently failing, I mean, and failing is, you know, failing's that word people don't like to talk about, and it means different things to different people. But to me, failing is not being able to do what you want to do. Nobody else can say, well, that's a failure because you did it this way. But when you have a plan for yourself and you can't follow that plan over and over and over and over, you got to, but I'm not saying don't beat yourself up, but you got to step back. You got to get rational about it, the whole thing going back to the old drawing board, and see what you're doing and make changes. Because if you failed 25 times, something you're doing is wrong. And, you know, that's insanity. Anyhow, I hope you guys like this video. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel, and I hope you guys will have a great weekend. Share this with somebody if you've got some people out there that are tiptoeing around, you know, coming into a high-carb vegan lifestyle, want to be raw vegan, or just want to eat a little bit healthier. Maybe it'll benefit them a little bit. Hope you guys all have a great weekend, and I love you a lot. Peace.